I'm Dr. Mark Pitstick. Welcome to video number 1 of topic number 9 for the course, Greater Reality Living, 5 Keys to Knowing and Showing the Great News, Creating the Greatest Life You Have Envisioned, Sharing Your Special Talents, and Making Our World a Better Place. For optimal benefit, please watch videos number 1 through 8 first. Topic number 9 is entitled The SoulPhone Project, and I know a bit about it. I direct the SoulPhone Foundation. I've conducted research for the SoulPhone Project. I'm a core team member and regularly meet with Dr. Gary Schwartz, the electrical engineers, software specialists, evidential mediums, and other key people on this project. To review, Dr. Gary Schwartz, PhD, is a former Harvard and Yale professor where he pioneered the field of behavioral medicine. He also was a pioneer in the field of energy healing. Next, he went to the University of Arizona where he studied the question of survival of consciousness, that is, afterlife, starting with evidential mediums and then moving into the SoulPhone technology, which we'll be talking about here. He's now a professor emeritus at University of Arizona, having recently retired in May of 2024. This recording is in June of 2024. So you can prepare yourself and others for the predictable paradigm shifts that will occur after 2 things. First of all, announcements by Dr. Schwartz and his team that life after death has now been scientifically proven. We say now that it has been definitively demonstrated scientifically, but Dr. Schwartz has avoided using the P word, proven, since he is such a serious scientist. But with the data we've collected now, he considers that word can be used reliably, accurately as a scientist, that life after death has been now scientifically proven. And then, and that should be announced, well, first of all, I'm announcing it right now, but on a large scale in 2025. There's a lot of groundwork to do. You understand, we only have one chance to make a best first impression. The other thing that's going to happen will be public demonstrations of what's called the Soul Switch, which provides binary answers, yes or no, from post-material persons. That is, those who have passed on and are in contact with us. Now, those demos will start later this year with key people, large donors, volunteers, and so on. Early next year, to a group of scientists from a couple different organizations, then to other stellar organizations where people are more open to this information, and then finally, and we're probably now at mid-2025, large scale, putting it out there every way we can. So those are obviously going to be 2 very huge announcements, changes that again will create a predictable paradigm shift. Some people won't believe it. Some people will be very excited. Fundamentalist religious people may get angry that we're taking their action away. Who knows? There's going to be so many different reactions, so we need to be prepared for that. And then that's when educational programs will start worldwide. I mean, we're doing this right now, and I have for the last 7 years. That's one of the IRS approved reasons for the SoulPhone Foundation to present the collective evidence of life after death. But these outreaches will be made on a wider scale, much wider scale, so that others know about the great news and also the nature of reality, which I also call the big picture of life. So that knowledge will set the stage for some wonderful things for you, which is how to create the greatest life you have envisioned. And the word you referring to your real self, your higher self, your totality of being, not just your limited earthly brain and body. And then also, as the more you create the greatest life of your dreams, which includes sharing your greatest gifts, that allows you to help others and make our world a better place. So I know that's a lot of information. You can learn more at my website, soulproof.com. Article number 19 about the great news, number 63 about the big picture of life, and 112, creating the greatest life you have envisioned. Now, the SoulPhone project will be a catalyst, a tipping point for widespread consciousness shifts for many people, and thus for our planet. And this Greater Reality Living program that you're watching provides a practical path for making informed and inspired steps toward that vision. Now, there are a number of organizations or populations doing this, for example, near-death experiencers, and you can learn more about those, article number 94, and again, all these articles are at soulproof.com. Shining Light Parents, you can learn more about that, article number 82. These are parents who have had one or more children pass and have found a way to transmute the sadness and suffering into serving others and shining so brightly. They're just an amazing group of people. People who have had spiritually transformative experiences triggered by different ways. Article number 17, what I call the 15 percenters. This is the approximate percentage of people on Earth right now who have more intermediate or advanced energy levels or soul development. And you can learn about that, article number 100. And then other organizations full of people who share this same vision of creating the greatest life you have envisioned, helping others, and making our world a better place. That includes Humanity's Team, IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies, IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences, and others listed in the resource document that accompanies this course, and also in article number 119. So that's an introduction to this video. Now, I mainly use slides to discuss the SoulPhone project since there are so many important images to share. So here we go. With the SoulPhone project, and just gives an idea of an image of a technology someday being used that reaches across dimensions, reaches other people and other realms. Super fascinating, of course. This is the Laboratory for Advances in Consciousness and Health on the campus of the University of Arizona in Tucson. And I've spent many, many hours at these offices. So this is where it's being birthed, and super exciting place. I love this place. This is Dr. Schwartz, and we've talked about, and he is the director of the Laboratory for Advances in Consciousness and Health, and also the director of the SoulPhone project. So our vision, Dr. Schwartz, I, his wife Rhonda, and our team of core people, including electrical engineers, software specialists, and others, is to help more people have a better understanding about the nature of reality. That's really how is life set up, and enjoy greater reality living, whatever that means for them, when you know you don't really die, and all the other great news. So as we just mentioned, there will be more hope and inspired action globally after announcements of scientific proof for life after death and demonstrations of SoulPhone PMP communication technology. Again, remember PMP is our acronym for post-material person, which is our favorite term for those who used to live on Earth, their earthly forms die, but the 99.99% of who and what they are still exists elsewhere. This is a book Dr. Schwartz and I wrote together, Greater Reality Living, and it came out in 2018. So at that point, we were focused on proving just the first point in the great news, that no one really dies. That is, we have eternal consciousness. But now, in the years since, we've shifted to, and we talk about in the book, but we'll focus on it more, and certainly it'll be reflected in the subtitle, evidence for the great news for every aspect of your life. This is the children's book, ages 10 through 16 or so, but it turns out some adults say they got more out of this book than they did any of our others. The big picture of life. And so this is a great photo. This little girl, for example, the inside this white line describes what she can see with her earthly senses. But then at some point, something allows her to then expand her vision, see more of the nature of reality. And that's what she's exploring there. It looks like her dog is as well. So what is the greater reality? The totality of existence, all that is. And we've used other terms, the nature of reality. So most people have no idea how vast that is, and how wonderful and safe that is, and how much we each are embedded safely in that. So let's explain some about Dr. Schwartz, because he's the driver of this. I mean, he's the genius. I've met a lot of people in my life. I never met anyone like him. I'm very thankful that he's on Earth doing what he's doing. First of all, he had 2 near-death experiences when he was a child, and each time saw the light, experienced being held by it, lifted up. He, of course, had no foundation for understanding that. He didn't even tell others, but he remembers them very vividly and as a special experience for him. And of course, going through that might have altered his brain a little, and opened that control valve so he saw more of reality than the average person. Or he might have been that way without the near-death experience. We don't know. He did have very intelligent, accomplished, and supportive parents. His dad had a PhD from Columbia University in chemistry and was a pharmacist, and his mom was graduated from Juilliard School of Music, both very prestigious organizations. Dr. Schwartz was curious and inventive by nature. Just tell 2 stories. When he was about 5 years old, his older brother was upstairs and his parents were gone. And so I would just call him Gary when I'm telling stories like this, was looking at the TV, and back in the day when they had the old rabbit ear antennas, and he noticed that if he moved the rabbit ear antennas, the picture changed. Also, he noticed if he grabbed the antenna, it would be a better picture than if he didn't hold it. And so he reasoned at some level that maybe his body was acting like an antenna. So he got a screwdriver and some tools and unhooked the antenna. No picture. Then he put his finger on the connection where the antenna used to be and noticed that there was a picture. And if he put his arms up in the air, one arm, even a better picture. So he experimented with that a few times. His parents came home and he excitedly showed them what he had discovered. And being supportive and intelligent, they encouraged that. And they went through the same experiments and replicated it, basically. My parents, I think, would have, at least my mom would have spanked me and, don't ever do that again.
but you can't get shocked from that. There's no voltage involved to speak of. Another one was when he was in kindergarten, the teacher asked all the students to consider if they could have one wish, what would it be? And his name starting with an S, he was near the end of the list. So the children went one by one. I'd like a bicycle, I'd like a puppy, and so on. So when it came to Gary, he said he would like to be a magician, an invisible magician. And the teacher said, really, why? And he said, so I could travel around the world and help people, but no one would know it was me. Well, that's not your average 5-year-old. So these are the kinds of things, of course, that suggest we're dealing with a more evolved, a highly evolved, advanced soul. As a child, he drew multiple pictures of a house. He had never seen the house. For some reason, it was really in his mind. He had them taped up in his room on the wall, and much later discovered that that was Benjamin Franklin's boyhood home. Now, I'm not saying that's evidence that he was Benjamin Franklin. Maybe he was a colleague, or maybe it's just some odd way he picked that up. But it's certainly an interesting story, and there are lots of them surrounding Dr. Schwartz. He was self-taught and accomplished with 6 different musical instruments and was in several different bands and was considering music as a career. But he did so well in school. He didn't have to study. He got straight A's when he applied himself. And he also was an extremely hard worker with legendary focus. I know one time he was telling me he was uh, he was going to Harvard and he was taking summer classes. And he worked full time during the day. And then he would go and volunteer at one of the labs and put in 6 more hours. He said he averaged about 5 or 6 hours sleep a night all summer. And that was his summer, quote, vacation. But that's just the way he is. So that's why he got into Cornell for his bachelor's undergrad training. He got a master's in clinical psychology from Harvard, a PhD in psychophysiology from Harvard, and psychophysiology being looking at what affects emotions. The physiology is how the body works, psych is the mind. So that mind-body connection. And he was one of the early researchers in body-mind research, which we'll share. He is an assistant professor at Harvard. Then he went to Yale because they offered him a really great staff and budget to do the work he was doing at the time. And he was the first director of the Yale Mind Body Institute, holistic Body Mind Healing Center. And he was a tenured professor at Yale. But then he decided he wanted to find a school that was less conservative so he could explore the next phase in his studies, which was energy healing. Neither Harvard or Yale were ready quite at that time to support that. So he went to University of Arizona, where he's still a senior professor. As I mentioned, he was a co-founder and 3 or 4 other people with him in the field of behavioral medicine, which is amazing. And as mentioned, with the energy healing, did scientific research proving the effectiveness of energy healing approaches like Reiki and healing touch used by many nurses. He founded a group called the Academy for Advances in Post-Material Science. AAPSglobal.com is their website. A group of many university professors, physicians, psychologists, scientists, whose working assumption is that consciousness is primary. That is not the byproduct of a brain. Brain dies, the consciousness goes away, but rather consciousness receives human birth and survives bodily death. And that's a really important group. He's published over 450 scientific papers, six in the most prestigious scientific journal called Science. I was listening to a scientist a while back, and he was saying he has over 150 published papers. Dr. Schwartz has over 3 times that. So he's co-edited, and these numbers are old. I think you could add a couple more to each of these. Co-edited 13 academic books, author of 12 books, and here's the website for his lab, lach.arizona.edu. Now, why is scientist? So here's a scientist. Why is scientific evidence for life after bodily death so important? Because if you have faith, for example, from a religion or what you detect in nature, that there's a loving creator and that energy isn't destroyed, life and love certainly survive bodily death. And then you add to it knowledge based on scientific research, that's when you have certainty. That's when you have certainty about who you are, why you're here, etc. And then that's when you can share your greatest gifts, our world a better place, help others, and have the most wonderful life you live. So this is a drawing, an image from our children's book, The Big Picture of Life. And we can't quite see it, so here's this grandma in bed. She's passing on her real self, her full spirit is rising up above. The family saying, "We love you, Grandma. We'll see you later." And I had one grandchild on each knee at that time. I think they were like 10 or 8, and they were reading it, taking turns reading it. And when we got to that one, I said, "You know, kids, someday Grandpa, I'm going to die, but this body will. And it's okay. We'll see each other again. By then, we'll have the SoulPhone technology, and we'll be in touch that way. So it's nothing to be afraid of." And Stella, and they're both amazing, of course, my grandkids. Stella said, "I don't want you to die, Grandpa." And I said, it's okay. You know, there's lots of evidence behind it. We talked about it. And I said, "So you feeling better about it?" She said, "I'll still be sad, but not as much." And I thought, oh my God, that's it in a nutshell. You know, when you know all this information, of course you're still going to be sad when a loved one passes, person or pet. But it lightens the grief and it abbreviates the grief for many people. That's a huge difference, a huge benefit, plus all the others. So here's Dr. Schwartz and I, and one of our ultimate goals is to develop the field of soul science, to make it a widely accepted academic field. We have both just spoken at the first conference for helping parents heal in Phoenix. And you know, if anybody needs this information, of course, it's these parents have had one or more children who passed on. Dr. Schwartz, over the last several years, has been developing this infrastructure. He has this vision for all this, and it's just fascinating when we get together and I get to pick his brain and he shares, here's what's next. He's been thinking all this out for 20 years, and he wanted to write these 2 books. On the left, Extraordinary Claims Require Extraordinary Evidence, which was a statement by Carl Sagan, PhD, and the subtitle, The Science and Ethics of Truth Seeking and Truth Abuse. As you know, right now, a lot of BS gets thrown around, fake news, what is claims for what is true, when in fact there's no significant evidence behind it. And so he knew that when we announced scientific life after death proof, and also the post-material person communication technology, that a certain number of people would, you know, that's fake, that's not true. Well, that's why he wrote this book and made this case, so that people can say, well, here's how you determine truth, and it's spelled out in there. What is most likely within a, what's the legal term, common doubt, And so he's established that now. And then he wrote a book with an attorney, Alan Boyd, The Case for Truth, Why and How to Find Truth. So again, very important infrastructure for all this. And this is our logo for the SoulPhone Foundation, glory, bringing spirit communication technology to life. And I love this logo because in the center, the three solid colors, gold and blue and green, are kind of like what we see on Earth. And that seems more real, or the only thing that's real. But then the background is this whole swirl of colors. I like energy, more subtle. Uh, and that to me represents the rest of reality, the rest of the greater reality that many people can't sense, but is very much nonetheless real. On our website, soulphone.org, you'll see our list of educational advisors and some very well-known people, all renowned in their own fields. So we're very proud to have them. And dear Bill Guggenheim was a pioneer, and he and his ex-wife Judy in the field of after-death communications. They wrote the book Hello from Heaven, and he changed worlds last year. So I want to honor that. And there are evidential medium advisors. Again, some of the top names. These are all US mediums. And you've heard me talk about my fiance, Andy. Well, this is her. She trained for 5 years in England with Mavis Patilla, one of the best known mediums. And she said that there are some really, really good mediums in Europe. I think it's because it's more widely supported, understood, a larger number of spiritualist churches. But anyway, these are some of our go-to people. Dr. Schwartz and his team need some input from evidential mediums. Now, next I want to discuss some historical attempts to detect or contact post-material persons. You might be surprised to know some of the biggest names in technology development in the past tried to do this. First of all, Guglielmo, and who doesn't love to say that name, Marconi invented the radio, and he attempted to invent what he called radio to the dead. All of these people are in the early to mid 1900s. So, of course, they didn't have technology, they didn't have the software. It turns out that a big part of the success of our current technology is due to software, being able to run so many experiments and then get data averaging to allow the signal of post-material persons to rise above background noise. Alexander Graham Bell, I'm sure you've heard that name, inventor of the telephone. He attempted to invent the telephone to the dead. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb and many other inventions. He was working on the spirit finder. When he passed, I read that he worked on it for 11 years and was convinced that those who passed are still alive but have a more subtle energy. And he reasoned that he should be able to detect it and attempt communication with them. And then Nikola Tesla, excuse me. And here's a quote by Martin and Burns in their book, Edison versus Tesla, the battle over their last invention. Tesla monitored Edison's paranormal work, with both men racing to create a device that picked up the frequencies of discarnate spirits. There was some competition between Tesla and Edison. So in around, let's see, back straight, the late 1990s, Dr. Schwartz moved into survival of consciousness research. He had worked a lot on the healing energy research and considered this to be the next frontier for him, the next calling. So this is the scientific or clinical term for life after death, survival of consciousness. And here he is working. He, as I say, prodigious work habits. He oftentimes, like he will hear his text, his phone ding or his computer ding in the middle of the night. And if he's waiting a message or waiting some input from one of the software people has the latest software package, he'll get up, check it out, and then work for 8 hours. And then he'll take a nap and he'll continue working the rest of the day. It's truly amazing.
This is the end of video number 1 on topic number 9, the SoulPhone project. I'll continue with video number 2. Let it shine.